He called me his baby sister, promised he'd never let anyone hurt me. But I didn't know anyone meant him. But then, I became the curse he could never escape. He called me his baby sister from the very beginning. Even when we were just kids and the world felt like a war zone outside our little home, he'd hold my hand, look me in the eyes, and say, "No one will ever hurt you, Mira. Not while I'm breathing." And I believed him. I was 6 when our parents died in a car accident. That day, my whole world went dark, but not completely. Because my brother, Arian, stepped into the role of everything: protector, parent, provider. My world. He was only 16 then, but he stood like a shield between me and everything painful. He'd tuck me in every night, make my breakfast, fight the world for me. I used to look at him like he was some kind of divine gift. People whispered behind our backs, calling him a kid raising a kid. But to me, Arian was a hero. When other kids played outside, I sat by the window, waiting for Arian to return from work. And when he did, no matter how tired, he'd smile and say, "Your smile is my home, Mira. Don't ever stop smiling." He gave up college, his dreams, his freedom. All for me. Or so I thought. Back then, I couldn't see the cracks behind that perfect smile. I couldn't feel the storm that was quietly building behind his eyes. I didn't know that sometimes monsters were the face of the person you trust most. Because when you love blindly, you bleed silently. I was 13 when the first shadow fell. I'd started noticing things I couldn't explain. Locked drawers, whispers on phone calls, that terrifying shift in his voice when I asked about certain things. Once, I found a bruise on his hand and asked where it came from. He smiled, too easily, and said, "Just life, little one. It bruises us all. Don't worry your sweet little head about it." I didn't press further. Because I trusted him. Because he was Arian. My brother. My guardian angel. But angels don't lie. And angels don't destroy everything they promise to protect. Back then, I couldn't hear the truth screaming behind the silence. I just smiled and went on loving him. The only way I knew how. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. And neither does pain. Especially when it's planted by the one who vowed to never let you cry. I carried his promise like a prayer inside me. No one will ever hurt you, Mira. Those words were my lullaby, my anchor, my shield. Arian had raised me in a world where he was the sun, the moon, and everything in between. So when he said I was safe, I never questioned him. Not even when the world started feeling strange. At 14, I began to notice how tightly he held the strings of my life. What I wore, who I talked to, where I went, who was safe to be around. At first, I mistook it for care, then for protection. But eventually, it felt like a cage disguised as love. "Why can't I go to Anya's birthday party?" I once asked. He didn't even blink. "Because people there don't deserve you." I wanted to argue. But I didn't. Because love makes you surrender. Especially when it's all you've ever known. My friends started calling me spoiled behind my back. They thought Arian was overprotective because he loved me too much. They didn't see what I saw. The flicker in his eyes when I disagreed. The silence that felt like thunder before a storm. The way he'd twist guilt into love until I apologized for asking anything at all. "You think I'm doing this to control you?" he once asked with a bitter laugh. "I gave up my life for you, Mira. And this is how you thank me?" And I broke inside. Because I felt guilty for wanting a life of my own. So I stayed quiet. And he kept the world out. He said he was protecting me. From the world. From heartbreak. From betrayal. From pain. But what he never told me was, the thing he was really protecting me from was the truth. Because the world wasn't my enemy. He was. I just hadn't figured it out yet. Not until the night I heard him whisper on the phone. "She won't find out. She trusts me too much. Mira is still blind." That night, something inside me snapped. Like a thread pulled too tight for too long. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding, mind spinning. Who was he talking about? What was he hiding? I wanted to confront him, to scream, to ask why, but my voice stayed stuck in my throat. Because when your protector becomes the threat, your heart doesn't know whether to fight, flee, or simply break. He said he wouldn't let anyone hurt me. But what do you do when anyone turns out to be him? That night, after I heard his voice on the phone, I couldn't sleep. Every memory, every word, every "I love you, baby sister" started to feel like lies wrapped in velvet. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I followed him. He thought I was at school. I wasn't. I stayed hidden as he left the house and slipped into the shadow of the city. What I saw that day, it shattered the last piece of the sister who believed in her brother. Arian, my Arian, wasn't going to work like he told me. He wasn't doing odd jobs to keep our home running. He was meeting men, in dark corners, exchanging envelopes and whispered threats. At first, I thought maybe it's just business. Maybe it's just something temporary. But then I saw her. A girl, my age, scared, trembling, pushed toward Arian like an offering. And him? He smiled. That warm, soft smile he used to give me. But there, it looked sharp, hungry, predatory. I watched him slip his hand around her shoulder and say something I couldn't hear. And in that moment, I stopped breathing. Was this what he'd been doing all along? Was this where his bruises came from? Was this how he made money, using girls who trusted him, like I did? Suddenly, it all made sense. The control, the isolation, the possessiveness. It wasn't just about protecting me. It was about preparing me. Because I was next. I felt it in my bones. And just like that, the world I had lived in, the world he had built for me, became a prison I had never seen before. He didn't protect me from the world. He protected the world from seeing what he really was. A monster with a brother's face. And I was just a puzzle piece in his twisted game. So I ran. But not far. Because I needed answers. And more than that, I needed revenge. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him. Because some betrayals don't deserve tears. They deserve ruin. For days, I pretended. I smiled when he looked at me, laughed when he made a joke, played the role of his baby sister so perfectly, even he couldn't see the storm rising in my eyes. But inside, I was becoming something he had no idea how to fight. I wasn't going to be another girl on his list. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. He taught me to be silent, obedient, and trusting. But he forgot. He also raised me to be observant, to think like him, to be dangerous in silence. So I started gathering pieces. The numbers on the envelopes. The names he whispered in half sleep. The places he disappeared to. He had secrets. So many. And I was about to dig them all up and let them rot in the daylight. I hacked his old laptop, the one he thought I never touched. I knew his passwords. Of course I did. I had been watching him all my life. What I found was filth. Photos. Videos. Records of money. Names of girls. Some I knew from school. Some I would never see again. He was trafficking. Manipulating. Destroying. And I had loved this man. Called him my world. He had promised no one would hurt me. All while standing with blood on his own hands. But now, it was my turn. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. No, that would have been too easy. I wanted him to feel it. The way I did. I wanted every moment of his life to start crumbling, one thread at a time. So I began. I messaged the other girls, anonymously. I leaked evidence to a journalist I trusted. I planted suspicion in his circle. I deleted files without a trace. I sowed doubt, fear, chaos. Every day, I smiled at him like the sister who adored him. And every night, I tore another piece of his empire apart. He didn't know where the storm was coming from. But I did. It came from me, the baby sister who once worshipped him. Now, I was the curse he'd carved with his own hands. And I had only just begun. It started slowly. The calls that used to come daily stopped. The men he worked with stopped trusting him. The money vanished. One by one, everything he'd built on shadows began to fall apart. And Arian, my once godlike brother, started to panic. I watched it all unfold. From across the dinner table, behind quiet glances, beneath my calm smile, he would pace in the living room, muttering curses under his breath, trying to figure out where the cracks were coming from. And the irony? I was sitting right there, slicing apples, pouring tea, pretending to be the sister he still thought he owned. He had no idea I was the one lighting fires under every step he took. But I wasn't just destroying his world, I was unraveling his mind. I started moving his things, deleting voicemails, changing passwords. He thought he was losing control. And he was. Just not in the way he imagined. He started drinking more, sleeping less, snapping at me. But every time he raised his voice, I tilted my head and whispered sweetly, "Are you okay, bye? You don't seem like yourself." And it worked. He began questioning everything. Then came the break. One night his phone buzzed. A message from a number he didn't recognize. "I know what you did, and so will the world." He turned pale. And I just watched him. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Because this time, I wasn't the girl breaking. He was. He tried to disappear, to erase the trail. But the trail didn't just lead back to him anymore. It screamed his name. And no matter how fast he ran, the noose tightened. Because the deeper he ran into the shadows, the more they started to look like me. It happened one night. A knock on my door. Faint. Desperate. I opened it and there he stood. My brother. The man who once towered like a god in my life. Now nothing more than a trembling shadow of himself. His eyes were red, wild, hunted. "Please," he whispered. "Someone's after me. I don't know who, but they want to destroy me." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who once dragged me away from friends in the name of protection. The man who said no one would hurt me except him. And now? He was asking for help. From me. I softened my face. Stepped aside. Let him in. "I'll help you, bye," I said gently, offering water, pretending to care. Pretending to still be the sister he remembered. And he believed me. He spilled everything. All the deals, the people, the threats. He confessed like I was his priest. And I listened. Not to save him, but to make sure he burned properly. I recorded every word, every crime, every lie, every sick, trembling excuse. He asked me to help clean his tracks. I said I would. He handed me files to destroy. I backed them up. He begged me not to go to the police. I promised I wouldn't. And the entire time, I was feeding those files, those recordings, those truths, to the very people who'd been looking for him. He thought he had a lifeline. He didn't realize it was me holding the rope. And I wasn't pulling him out. I was letting it wrap tighter. Letting it dig deeper. Letting it choke the man who once taught me how to stay silent while drowning. So when he looked at me, eyes full of tears, and whispered, "Why is this happening to me?" I smiled, leaned in close, and whispered, "Maybe because monsters always think their sins won't return home." And then I walked away, leaving him in the house we once called home, surrounded by his secrets, alone, and already forgotten. He thought he was being hunted by strangers. He had no idea the ghost chasing him wore his sister's face. But what broke him wasn't the fear. It wasn't even the downfall. It was me. Because he forgot something very simple. I wasn't just his sister. I was his mirror. His shadow. The only one who knew where he hid when he was scared. Where he went when he needed control. Who he loved. What he couldn't live without. He knew how to hurt strangers. But I knew how to unmake him. And I started with the one thing he still tried to protect. Mom. He had lied to her too. Spun stories about work. Told her I was going through a phase. Kept her far from the truth with phone calls filled with half-truths and rehearsed warmth. So, I told her everything. Not in anger. Not in rage. I sat her down, printed every file, every transaction, every girl's name. Her hands shook. Her lips parted. But no sound came out. And when she finally whispered, "This can't be true. This isn't my Arian," I just looked at her and said quietly, "It's not your Arian, but it's mine." The boy who once climbed trees for me, who stitched my teddy bear when I cried. He was gone, replaced by a man who learned how to smile while stealing innocence. Mom collapsed into sobs. But I didn't cry. I couldn't, because tears are for loss. And what we had lost was not worth mourning. She didn't speak to him after that. Didn't answer his calls. And that silence, it wrecked him. The one woman he believed would never abandon him was gone. Because of me. And it was just the beginning. Next, I went after his pride. The business. Not the one on paper. The real one, hidden in encrypted folders, dark sites, unlisted contacts. I fed it all to someone who had been waiting in the shadows longer than even I had. Ria. She wasn't just another girl Arian had hurt. She had survived him. Barely. But survival has a funny way of turning pain into rage. She and I had met in a support group. Both of us broken. Both of us angry. Both of us done waiting for karma. She had been gathering evidence for years. Names. Routes. Patterns. But what she needed, what she lacked, was access. And I had that. In his phone. His files. His routines. I gave her everything. And together, we burned it all down. The operation he built brick by bloody brick, we tore it apart. One leak at a time. One message. One connection. Until every man who once shook his hand now wanted to crush his throat. Arian began to unravel publicly. Stories leaked. Accounts frozen. Locations raided. He was exposed. But the media hadn't touched it yet. Because I wanted the final blow to come with a face. Mine. It was the anniversary of our parents' death. A day he always lit candles. Wrote prayers. Posted pictures pretending to be the dutiful son. I waited until that day. And then I uploaded the video. A compilation of everything. The girls. The money. The crimes. His voice. His face. And at the end, a soft, cold whisper. Mine. You called yourself my protector. You promised to keep me safe. But all you did was break the girl who trusted you more than anyone. So here I am, returning the favor. You taught me silence. I learned something better. How to make noise that destroys. The video went viral within an hour. By the end of the day, Arian's name was everywhere. Not as a brother. Not as a protector. But as a predator. And when he called, because of course he called, I picked up. And said nothing. Just breathed. Listened. To his panic. His begging. His broken, "I'm sorry." And finally, he whispered, "Why? You were my sister." That's when I finally spoke. Calm. Icy. Certain. Exactly. I was your sister. And you made me your enemy. Then I hung up. The next day, the police issued an arrest warrant. But he was already gone. Vanished. Running, hiding, desperate. But it didn't matter. Because it wasn't about the bars around him. It was about the prison inside him. The shame, the fear, the isolation, all the things he used to control me with, now his only companions. People he once used now turned their backs. Money couldn't buy silence anymore. And the one girl who once saw him as a hero had become the shadow he couldn't escape. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, precise, personal. And this was surgical. He thought I'd break like all the others. But he forgot. I was the one who watched him build his empire. So I knew exactly where to strike to make it fall. They say time heals everything. But some wounds become scars that whisper. Arian disappeared. No one knew where. No headlines after a while. The world moved on. But not him. Because I didn't let him. I made sure every time he tried to start over, a new name, a new place, a new identity, his truth followed. Quiet leaks, old voices, untraceable emails sent to every employer. Each time he rebuilt, I knocked again. Not loud, not with fists. Just enough to remind him he was never free. Because freedom is for the innocent. And he buried his own. One night, years later, I received a letter. No return address. Just a few crooked lines in a shaky hand. Do you ever sleep, little sister? Do you ever miss the boy I was? I read it twice. Then I burned it. Because I didn't miss the boy he was. That boy died the moment he used my love as a weapon. People asked me over the years, did it satisfy you? Ruining him? Ending him piece by piece? And I always gave the same answer. No. Not because I regretted it, but because there was nothing left to satisfy. The girl who once needed his protection. The sister who once looked up to him like the stars. She died the day he chose to be my nightmare. What I did wasn't revenge. It was a burial. One he forced me to dig. I still pass mirrors sometimes and wonder, what would I look like if none of it had happened? If he had stayed my hero? But then I remember, heroes don't leave scars like his. So now I don't wait for peace. I don't wish for healing. I simply walk forward and leave behind footsteps he'll never stop hearing. Because in the end, he taught me pain, and I turned it into a silence that screams inside him forever.